Life is changing rapidly now upon Serina, as nature begins to try to balance out its artificial environment. The canaries have spread to all major landmasses and adapted to a great variety of diets. For the first time for its avian inhabitants, notable predators are beginning to emerge. Having moved from egg-eating to also include pilfering of nestlings, the hook-billed egg-eater canaries are experiencing a boom in diversity, having spread to most continents, moving further and further south as local birds become wise to their hunger and become increasingly intolerant. In the bamboo forests, the snails begin to decline following the evolution of Serina's first social, highly aggressive carnivores, the ants. Though only small and naturally docile ant species, predominantly though not wholly of genus Formica, were introduced to Serina, it took only 1 million years for them to significantly alter their behavior. Without predators or significant competition, it did not take long for docile omnivores to turn to hunting, pillaging the nests of Serina's hapless, ground-nesting birds. Their aggression grew, gathering in larger and larger swarms to overwhelm nestlings and eventually sitting mothers as well, desperate to protect their young. Their jaws became larger and more powerful as several species began to develop venomous stinging bites. The first wave of predators to hit Serina would be perhaps the worst: the empire ants. Growing up to an inch in length, these large-jawed, meat-eating insects become a terrible curse to the planet's large, defenseless gastropods, overwhelming them by the millions and dismembering them piece by piece, to carry a stock back to immense underground colonies composed of several hundred miles of subterranean tunnels. Within 10,000 years more, these most abnormally large snails will have been eaten all but to extinction, survived only by more reasonably sized forms, able to climb into the canopies to escape Serina's new apex predator. So too will be ravaged the unfortunate few large ground canaries to have totally forgotten how to fly in their brief era of prosperity. It is no longer safe to nest on the bare ground, and those birds which cannot quickly remember to place their nests above it or learn to fight off the hordes will soon lose out in this game of life, as their young are repeatedly destroyed by the world's new rulers. It is the ants which also now begin to take over the snail's role in the ecosystems. While the carnivorous Formica ants pilfer the snails themselves, they open up a path for the leafcutter ants to quickly take their place. Soon there will be no forest glade free of their eternal harvesting, as tens of billions of ants begin to fulfill the roles normally filled by a few million large ungulates. Originating in the tropical belt, they will gradually move further both north and south to take over a niche otherwise all but empty, until vertebrate life catches up to them. Thus ends the era of the snail and begins the age of the ants. But neither too can this glut last forever. As the ants proliferate, so too do the number of creatures that begin to view them as a source of food. The first creatures to do so are the predatory mites, which begin to infest the nests of the insects, devouring their eggs and young. Soon, many creatures will follow suit, as Serina's ecology attempts to stabilize itself to reasonable boundaries. Serina's meadows at this time begin to explode with color as a handful of clover and sunflower species begin to speciate at a remarkable rate. Initially, both clades experienced a great drop in diversity, unable to compete with grasses and lacking natural insect pollinators. By now, however, a few surviving species of both have re-established in great numbers, pollinated now by either the wind, these plants being notable for significant atrophy of their petals, which became of little purpose, and others by unusual ants, which exhibit the peculiarity of retaining their wings throughout life. Like the leafcutters, these ants are entirely herbivorous, but they share a much closer relation to the empire ants, as belonging to genus Formica. Lacking the venomous stings or large mandibles of their relatives, the sweet-tasting honey ants become both a vital food source to many bird species. Their unique ability of flight, reversing an earlier trend towards flightlessness in the groups that began to pursue them, and a lifeline for Serina's flowers, now able to spread far and wide, taking their pollinators along, but which otherwise would have likely died out within the next few million years. Throughout damp regions worldwide, bamboo forests now climb to heights of over 130 feet. Below ground, a fertile soil has been taken over in the absence of moles by the invertebrates. Millipedes proliferate in the leaf litter of both meadow and bamboo glade, reaching lengths of half a meter or more. Also having taken to the soil are the crickets, which feed upon the plentiful starchy roots of the moon's plentiful grasses. Already they've begun to grow in absence of competition, with one species reaching a body length 4 inches long and the weight of a small rat. Growing up to 25 feet long, however, the Serenian bullworm of the deeper subsoil is now the longest terrestrial animal on the planet. In the sea, an evolutionary arms race has begun amongst the live-bearing fishes, as the largest individuals begin to specialize in preying upon the smaller. The largest fishes alive are now pelagic swordtails, over 12 inches in length, with males carrying elongated tail swords of equal length. Magnificent and colorful, they are free to take display to extreme lengths, lacking predators themselves, producing up to 300 offspring every 3 months, which needn't survive the perilous period as eggs or larvae like many other fishes do. They spread rapidly across a sea abounding with opportunity, ravaging the hordes of small poecilids that until now roamed with near impunity in a world without predators. They are absent now only from the coldest of polar waters, where the most adaptable small guppies can still glean a brief reprieve from their hunts, though even there death is never far, as these regions experience a boom in the population of cold water jellyfishes, taking advantage of this food source. A sustainable, balanced ecosystem is beginning to appear now. For the past 2 million years, the ants have experienced an incredible boom in diversity, coming to fulfill all manner of niches. This was not meant to last, however. As the insects proliferated, their own potential as a resource gradually emerged in the moon's budding ecosystem. Among the first creatures to take notice of this were the ladybird beetles. Originally being specialist predators of aphids, these insects and their larvae were heavily targeted as pests and subsequently a food source by many species of ants which, as on Earth, made use of these plant eaters for the sweet honeydew they produced. Within only 1.5 million years, however, the beetles began to evolve clever ways to avoid these new predators. By mirroring the pheromones of their own larvae, the ladybirds' larvae began to trick their very predators, not only into avoiding them, but in a complete behavioral switch to nurturing them. Thinking their own offspring had somehow become lost outside the nest, the ants would promptly pick them back up and bring them home, utterly unaware that these larvae were in fact imposters whom, once having infiltrated the nest, would now be able to grow fat and happy, gorging on their own larvae, while simultaneously under the ants' excellent protection. Within only a few 100,000 years, a new phenomenon began to appear. Formicid colony collapse syndrome, the end result of several years of the aptly named cuckoo ladybirds' infiltration and predation, significantly reduced the lifespan of individual colonies and their abilities to grow to exceptional sizes. Other ants, too, would become increasingly problematic as different factions began to come into increasing competition. Faced with a food shortage of their own doing, resulting from the extinction of the biggest land snails and first rush of small ground-nesting birds that had incited their speciation in the first place, many species of ants returned their attentions to the invertebrates, including one another. In desperation, the large and bulky empire ants, unable to find sufficient avian prey, began to mob their smaller neighbors and rob them of their own food stores and larvae. It did not take long for the cuckoo ladybird to adapt even to this and mimic these species' pheromones too, moving from one host to another. Now slowly starving off and being cannibalized from the inside, the age of the empire ant, a creature which had, in the face of an evolutionary vacuum, grown too specialized for its food source now gone, would come to a close as soon as it had arisen, their jaws having become unsustainably large and their heavy bodies too bulky to easily climb any longer. Unable to make sufficient use of any food source beyond defenseless land snails or the young nestlings of canaries, their rule of the planet would be short and soon forgotten as a radiation of increasingly specialized insectivorous birds began to incorporate the ants into their own diets. A combination of factors which over coming millennia would continue to push back the insect's role in the ecosystem to a more usual level. However, two groups of ants in particular would continue to expand their horizons. With the largest tetrapod herbivore at this time no larger than a ring-necked dove, the leafcutter ants would remain unchallenged in their niche for many millions of years more. By now having followed the spread of the bamboo forest worldwide, they have specialized faster than nearly any other creature on the planet, with different forms adapting to feed on all manner of distinct plants in every climate region. In more open environments, the honey ants too have experienced a rapid explosion of diversity as the world's most abundant flying species, with diets ranging from flower buds and pollen to other insects and small gastropods captured, killed, and carried away to single subterranean dwellings as larder for ravenous larvae. Many forms have already broken away from their colonial nature and live solitary lives, not unlike Earth's wasps. The clade's universal lack of venomous stings at this time has encouraged an equally great explosion in the numbers of insectivorous canaries, which now travel in great flocks in pursuit of this new food source.